Scott Rappaport reports now from Chicago.
They are shocking photos, images from Chris Farley's final hours alive. They seem to capture his whole life in just a few moments. Farley the clown, Farley the drug abuser, Farley passed out in his apartment, discovered dead. The pictures were taken by this woman. She may just be the last person to see the comic giant alive.
I kept telling him, take it easy, you know. He wouldn't listen, no. He was doing very large amounts of the cocaine.
Maniac on the phone.
Chris Farley was funny, there's no doubt about that. But many say the comic genius had a sad side, a lonely side.
He just made it very clear that he's like, man, it's hard for me to get a girlfriend.
Heidi Hauser, a former exotic dancer, says she was called to a Chicago party to perform on the morning of December 17th, just one day before Farley's death. That's where she first met the famous comic.
When I got to know him at the party, saw what a nice guy he was, you know, I really liked him.
When Chris Farley met Heidi Hauser, by all accounts, he was in the middle of a wild drug and alcohol binge. Farley spent much of those final days here, downtown Chicago, bouncing from bar to bar. Farley's final party started on Sunday, December 14th. And for 4 days, he was spotted partying up and down these streets.
I asked him at one point, I go, how long you been up? He said, maybe 3 or 4 days. I don't even think he knew how long he'd been up.
Heidi says in that one night, she saw both sides of Farley, the slapstick comic and the drug-abusing madman. But Heidi never realized that night would go so terribly wrong. Not long after arriving at the party, Heidi says she watched Farley doing cocaine.
He would say, I love this stuff, you know, and just cracking jokes about it.
Farley told Heidi there was a reason behind his frantic drug use.
He wanted to just go all out, and he said it was his last night partying. He's got a movie coming up, so maybe he had to take a physical, I don't know.
The 26-year-old dancer says after several hours, she and Farley left the party, heading to her home in Elk Grove Village, Illinois.
He just wanted more drugs, and when we got to my apartment, he had called somebody to bring him drugs. His friend brought in, you know, heroin and cocaine.
Farley clearly wasn't ashamed of his drug use. He posed as Heidi snapped this shot with a line of heroin in clear view. Heidi says Farley spent nearly $1,000 on drugs that night.
They told me not supposed to do that much, and he's like, just ignoring it. I would just look at him like, you know, stop, slow down, you know.
But Heidi was enjoying the ride. She even had a friend drop by to take this photo. Then, after spending most of the day at her house, Farley had a limousine take them to his downtown Chicago apartment. There, according to Heidi, Farley continued using cocaine until the early morning hours.
He was pounding on his chest and slapping, you know, slapping himself, and I kept saying, you know, stop. Why are you doing that, you know? He said, it's the heroin, it makes me act goofy. I couldn't do Saturday Night Live without it.
Farley tried to get Heidi to stay the night, jokingly kicking his feet in the air, landing on his back, where he quickly fell asleep. Heidi captured the moment with a picture.
I left him when he was, you know, sleeping, and I left him a note.
She says she thought later it would be funny to show Farley the picture. Instead, it may turn out to be the last photo ever taken of Chris Farley alive. That evening, Heidi learned the horrifying news. Farley had been found dead. Friends feared for her.
They're like, you got to get out of here and, you know, pack up your stuff and leave. And I said, I didn't do anything wrong.
Heidi has now left Chicago, trying to put her past behind her. But she still thinks about that night and wishes she could have done something.
If I could have gone back, you know, called for help, you know, I would have probably been a hero. I just wished I could go back and correct things, and I'm sorry I didn't.
Saturday Night Live had no comment on Heidi's claim that Chris told her he used heroin while working on the show. And Heidi has told her story.